Welcome back to our ongoing series on modern supply chain methods and technology. You know we love to bring you those cutting-edge tools and concepts, the things that really help you stay ahead. And today, we're going to dive deep into a framework you might not have heard of, but it's truly powerful for navigating the crazy world of supply chains. It's called the Cynefin Framework.
Yeah, think of it as like a mental model. Helps you with decision making. Figuring out what kind of problem you're dealing with so you apply the right solution, not just the one you're used to.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. I can already tell this is going to be useful. So tell me more about this Cynefin Framework. Where did it come from? Who came up with it?
Well, it was developed by a guy named Dave Snowden back in the late 90s, actually, at IBM.
IBM.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was initially for knowledge management, but it's kind of taken off since then and found uses in all sorts of fields, especially in supply chain management.
So it's not just a theory. People are actually putting this into practice.
Oh, absolutely. Companies like Toyota, Zara, they're using Cynefin to tackle all sorts of challenges, from natural disasters, think earthquakes, to those sudden shifts in demand you see when something goes viral. Super useful stuff.
All right, I'm definitely intrigued. So how does this work? What's the secret sauce?
Basically, Cynefin, it categorizes situations into 5 different domains. Each one needs a different approach if you really want to solve the problem.
Okay, 5 domains, so like 5 different ways of looking at a problem. Let's start breaking those down then. What's the first one?
The first domain is called simple. Sometimes it's called clear. This is the land of what we call the known knowns. Think stable, repeatable situations where cause and effect are super clear.
Oh, I see. So this is where your standard operating procedures, your best practices really shine.
Right, exactly. Think of it like your regular order fulfillment process. You get an order, you follow the steps, boom, it's shipped out. Simple. In these cases, having good SOPs, that's key.
Okay, makes sense. But I have a feeling not everything in supply chain is that simple. What's the next domain?
Next, you've got complicated. Now here, it's more about the known unknowns. Cause and effect still exists, but you got to do some analysis to really understand it.
So instead of a well-oiled machine, it's more like, I don't know, a complex engine. You need a specialist to come in and figure things out.
Perfect analogy. Think about trying to optimize a transportation route. You've got to factor in distances, fuel efficiency, delivery time windows, all sorts of things. That's where data analysis comes in, maybe even some fancy algorithms.
2 down, 3 to go. I have a feeling things are about to get really interesting here. What's next?
Now we're talking complex, the land of unknown unknowns. Here, you only figure out cause and effect after the fact. Patterns emerge over time.
So it's like you're sailing into uncharted waters. Got to be ready to adjust course as you go.
You got it. Think about launching a new product in a really volatile market. Who knows what's going to happen? You might test different marketing strategies, really listen to the customers, adapt based on what you're seeing. You got to experiment, probe, sense, and respond.
Okay, we've gone from well-oiled machines to sailing in uncharted waters. What's the next level of complexity?
Now things get really hairy. We're entering chaotic. This is crisis mode, high instability. Cause and effect are a total mystery. You don't have time to sit around analyzing things.
So you just got to act and act fast.
Yeah.
Stabilize the situation before you even start thinking about a long-term solution.
Exactly. Imagine a natural disaster hits and shuts down a key supplier. First thing you do is damage control. Find alternative sources, whatever it takes to keep things moving. Then you can figure out the longer-term solution.
Got it. 4 domains down, 1 to go. What's the 5th and final one?
The last one is disorder. This one's a little different. It's not really a domain in the same way as the others. It's more like a starting point. You're just not sure which of the other 4 domains applies yet.
So it's that moment of what on earth is going on here?
Exactly. It's all about gathering enough information to figure out what you're actually dealing with. Once you do that, then you can shift it into one of those other domains and choose the right approach.
All right, that's super helpful. We've got these 5 domains, but why is this Cynefin thing so important for us in the supply chain world specifically?
Well, think about it. Supply chains nowadays, it's globalization, technology's changing faster than ever, geopolitics are all over the place, consumer demand, it's just constant uncertainty. This framework, it's designed to help us deal with all that.
Right, so it's not just about reacting to problems, it's about recognizing what kind of problem we're facing so we can use the right tools and strategies.
Absolutely. It helps us move beyond those knee-jerk reactions and develop a more nuanced and effective response. Follow those established procedures when things are simple, dive into data analysis when it's more complicated, experiment when we're in uncharted territory.
This is starting to make a lot of sense. Can we maybe dive into some real-world examples of how Cynefin is being used in supply chain? I'm curious to see it in action.
Absolutely. Let's start with manufacturing. That's a great place to see all four domains in action.
Great. Let's explore that further.
In manufacturing, for those simple or complicated situations, think of tools like lean manufacturing and Six Sigma.
Yeah.
Those are all about optimizing production processes and solving those really technical problems.
Those are the classics, the tried and true methods.
Exactly. But then, think about something like the semiconductor shortage a few years back. Sudden shift in demand, total chaos. Now you're in that complex domain.
Right. Nobody had a playbook for that one. Companies had to figure things out on the fly.
That's exactly what they did. And then you have things like the earthquake in Japan back in 2011. That was a chaotic event that forced companies like Toyota to really rethink their entire supply chain.
I remember that. They had to act quickly just to stabilize things. Then they had to find ways to build in more resilience, adapt to that new normal. A real-life Cynefin case study. So manufacturing's got a little bit of everything, it seems. What about retail? How does it play out there?
Retail's a great example. It really shows how important it is to understand consumer behavior. You've got your complicated situations like forecasting seasonal demand, using all that historical data. But then you have that crazy world of fast fashion. That's definitely complex territory. Companies like Zara, they use small batches, and they're super quick to respond. Got to ride that wave of constantly changing trends.
It's like surfing, trying to stay ahead of the wave of unpredictable consumer demand.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the chaotic event of the toilet paper shortage, right? During COVID. Talk about a supply chain pushed to its limits.
You said it. Retail really shows how those different domains can all come into play.
Okay, so we've got manufacturing and retail. What about something like healthcare? How does Cynefin apply there?
Healthcare is super interesting because, well, the stakes are so high. You're dealing with things that really matter, medications, medical devices, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People's lives are on the line.
Exactly. And you see those simple and complicated situations there, too. Routine reordering of medications, using those analytical models for predictable demand. That's keeping the essential supplies flowing.
Right. Got to have those systems in place.
But then you have things like managing the supply for organ transplants or adapting to some brand new medical technology. That's complex stuff, requires a whole different level of flexibility. And of course, healthcare also deals with those chaotic events, like at the start of the pandemic, that scramble for PPE.
Yeah, that was a wake-up call for a lot of people. A real reminder of how quickly a supply chain can descend into chaos.
Yeah.
So it really seems like every part of the supply chain world can benefit from this Cynefin lens. You know, right? By understanding which domain a problem falls into, we can avoid making those bad decisions and become much more adaptable.
That's exactly it. It's all about recognizing that the old one-size-fits-all approach, it just doesn't work in today's world. Supply chains are too complex for that.
I'm starting to see the light here. This is great. But I'm also wondering, how do we actually apply this in a practical way? Especially when those disruptions hit, the things that really throw us off course.
That's a great question, and it's something we're going to delve into in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to unpacking that.
All right, so let's dig into those disruptions a little more. Supply chain disruptions, they're a fact of life, right? And Cynefin gives us a really solid framework for understanding them and, even more importantly, managing them.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question for all of us in supply chain.
Yeah.
How do you handle those curveballs? Where do we even start?
Well, why don't we start with something that keeps every supply chain person up at night? Demand fluctuations. They come in every size and shape, from those predictable seasonal swings to those sudden spikes, those ones that seem to come out of nowhere.
Like when a new gadget goes viral, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly, everybody's got to have it.
You got it. And that's a perfect example of how Cynefin helps us distinguish between what we call ordered demand fluctuations and those unordered ones. Those ordered ones, those predictable changes like seasonal stuff, they fall into the complicated domain.
Makes sense. Because even though it's complicated, we can usually use historical data, forecasting models, we can prepare.
Exactly. Think about the holidays. Retailers know it's coming, right? And while there's always some uncertainty about how big the surge will be, they can use their experience, their analytical tools to plan inventory, ramp up production, and make sure their logistics can handle it all.
So good practices, plus maybe a few extra contingency plans. just in case.
You got it. But then you have those unordered demand shifts, the ones that nobody sees coming. Those
Yeah.
tend to be more in the complex domain, and those can really mess things up.
Okay, yeah, like that viral tech gadget example.
Right.
No way to predict that, right?
Nope. And that's when that probe, sense, respond approach that Cynefin talks about, that's when it's super useful. Instead of trying to predict something you can't, you experiment. Get feedback, adjust as you go. Maybe you rush a limited stock to market. See what happens. Try different prices to see how people react.
It's like dipping your toe in the water before you jump in.
Exactly. And that's why having a flexible, agile supply chain is so important. You got to be able to change production levels, reroute shipments, even bring on new suppliers, all really fast.
And then there are those times when a disruption triggers a full-on panic buying frenzy, right? Like the toilet paper shortage during COVID.
Yeah.
That feels like it goes beyond complex right into the chaotic domain.
You're absolutely right. That's a classic chaotic situation. That's when you have to act fast, and I mean fast, to stabilize the situation. Might mean limiting purchases, rationing supplies, even finding emergency sources.
So it's all about damage control. First, you stop the bleeding, and then you figure out how to get back to a more complex or complicated state. Address those root causes.
You nailed it. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about another major disruptor, geopolitical issues.
Oh, yeah. Those are definitely keeping us on our toes these days.
They really are. But just like with demand, Cynefin can help us figure out how to respond. Some of these events, like a change in trade regulations, that might be a complicated situation. We know it's coming. We can analyze it. We can prepare.
Right, so you do some scenario planning, maybe stock up on some inventory, look for different sourcing options just in case. Good practices, all that.
Exactly. But then you get those sudden geopolitical shocks, the ones nobody saw coming.
Like when a major conflict breaks out or a country suddenly imposes sanctions. It happens fast.
And those are the ones that are often complex or even chaotic. Suddenly, you can't get those key supplies, transportation routes get cut off, the whole playing field changes overnight.
Talk about needing to be agile. That's where you have to activate those emergency plans, find new suppliers, maybe even redesign your products to use different materials.
You got it. In those complex situations, it's all about probe, sense, respond, gather information, try different things, adapt as you go. And if it's a truly chaotic event, you act first to stabilize things, then figure out how to move to a more manageable state.
Okay, so whether it's demand or geopolitics, Cynefin helps us recognize what kind of disruption we're facing. Is it something we can analyze and plan for, or is it something that needs us to be more flexible, more experimental?
Exactly. And by understanding that, by having the right mindset and approach, we can navigate those really tough situations so much better.
You know, speaking of navigating tough situations, there's really no better example of working through those different Cynefin domains than the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, that was a real wake-up call for supply chains everywhere.
Couldn't agree more. Talk about a demonstration of how fast things can change. 1 minute it's stable, the next minute it's complete chaos.
And hopefully back again, right?
Right. But the pandemic really highlighted those key principles from Cynefin, Act fast in chaos, experiment and adapt when things are complex, and then, once things calm down a bit, learn from it. Systematize those new best practices.
I think we'll be analyzing the pandemic's impact on supply chains for years to come. It really changed the game.
Oh, for sure. So many lessons learned. And Cynefin is such a useful framework for making sense of it all.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Demand, geopolitics, COVID. What are some of the key takeaways for our listeners, as they try to apply Cynefin in their own supply chains? What are the big things they should remember?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that you need to have a plan for each of those domains. It's not enough to just understand the framework, in theory. You have to think, okay, what am I going to do if I'm in a simple situation? What about complicated, complex, or chaotic? You got to have a game plan.
So it's like having a playbook, right?
Yeah.
Ready for any situation that comes up. You don't want to be caught off guard when the game changes.
Love that analogy. And those playbooks have to have specific actions, right? Like if it's chaotic, who's making the calls? What are the immediate steps you take? How do you communicate with everyone?
And if it's complex, how are you gathering information, testing solutions, knowing when to change course?
Exactly. And communication, that's huge. During a disruption, everyone's got to be in the loop.
So clear, consistent communication, super important.
It's essential. Another important takeaway is that Cynefin isn't just about reacting. It's about building a more resilient supply chain.
So it's not just about putting out fires, it's about fireproofing the whole house.
I like that. It's proactive.
Yeah.
You use Cynefin to identify risks, and then you make strategic decisions, build in more flexibility, some redundancy. That way, when those disruptions do happen, you're ready.
So building in those shock absorbers,
Yeah.
diversifying your sources, backup plans, designing a supply chain that can bend but not break.
You got it. Resilience is key.
This has been great. I feel like I've got a whole new toolkit for approaching problems, making decisions in supply chain, especially when it comes to those disruptions. But I also have to ask, are there any downsides to Cynefin? Any challenges our listeners should be aware of? Because no framework's perfect.
You're right. No framework's perfect.
Yeah.
And there are some things to keep in mind with Cynefin. We'll talk about those in the last part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Right.
All right, so you mentioned that Cynefin, as awesome as it is, has some limitations. Let's dig into that a little bit. What are some of those challenges? Things our listeners should keep in mind if they're going to start using this framework in their own work.
Well, one thing that can be a bit tricky is that Cynefin can be kind of abstract. It takes a little effort to really wrap your head around it, to understand all those nuances. And sometimes it's not crystal clear which domain a situation actually falls into. Especially in supply chain, things change so fast. You don't always have all the information you need to make a perfect call. There's definitely an element of, interpretation.
Yeah, I can see that. Two different people, even if they're both experienced in supply chain, they could look at the same problem and maybe categorize it differently, right? Based on their own background, how they see things.
Yeah.
That could lead to some interesting debates, I bet.
Oh, for sure. And it's important to remember, Cynefin's a framework. It's a tool to help you think, but it's not like a magic answer machine. It doesn't have all the solutions laid out. You still have to bring your own expertise to the table. Your analytical skills, your knowledge of your industry, your specific supply chain. That's crucial.
So it's not a replacement for experience, right?
Yeah.
It's more like a way to enhance your decision-making process.
You got it. It gives you a map, helps you understand the landscape, but it doesn't tell you exactly which path to take. You still got to do the navigating. And that takes experience. It takes judgment.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's a guide, not a rule book. What else should our listeners keep in mind about those limitations?
Well, another thing to remember is that situations, they don't always stay put in one domain. What starts out as a chaotic event, like you got to take action now to stabilize things, that might gradually shift into a complex situation or even a complicated one. As you get more info, things calm down a bit and you can start analyzing, finding those long-term solutions.
So it's fluid, right? It's not a one-time assessment. Okay, this is complex, we're done. It's an ongoing process.
Exactly. You have to be checking in, reevaluating where you are on that Cynefin map and adjusting how you're approaching things. And I think it's really important to remember, Cynefin, it's a powerful tool, but it's one tool, It's not the only thing you need. You still need those strong risk management processes, good communication systems. You need a culture that's all about being flexible, always looking for ways to improve.
So it's about weaving Cynefin into what you're already doing, using it to make your whole approach to supply chain better, not just thinking of it as a standalone thing.
You nailed it. It's about adding to your toolkit, not replacing everything you already know and do.
Wow, this has been so insightful. I feel like we've taken Cynefin, from what is this to, okay, I can actually use this. It's been a real deep dive.
Glad to hear it.
So as we wrap up here, what's one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners as they, start their own Cynefin journey in supply chain? What's the one thing they should really take to heart?
I'd say be open to it. Don't be afraid to experiment, to try it out in your own work, See how it fits, how it can help you. It's a powerful framework, but it's also flexible. The real magic happens when you understand those core principles and then you find ways to make them work for you, for your organization, your role, your specific challenges.
Make your own. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And don't be shy about sharing what you learn. The more we all talk about these tools, these techniques, the more we can all learn from each other. And that's how we make supply chain better, as a whole field.
That's a perfect thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Cynefin Framework. We hope you found it useful and that you'll be able to take these concepts and put them into action in your own work. Until next time, keep learning, keep adapting, and keep those supply chains flowing.